Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung. You text him, and nothing. He's online, he's seen it, yet there's no reply. You pass him in person, and he looks away, as if you were a stranger. That silence cuts deeper than words, leaving you wondering what you did wrong, what's changed, and why someone who once lit up when they saw you now acts as though you don't exist. But what if I told you this isn't always about you at all? What if this silence is not rejection, but a confession, not of your worthlessness, but of his own fears? Jung understood that people often hide behind masks, the persona they show the world, to protect themselves from being truly seen. And when a man ignores you, it can sometimes be that mask slipping into place. Not because he doesn't care, but because caring terrifies him. It might be fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, or wounds from the past that whisper to him, "Don't get too close." He might be wrestling with his own shadow, the parts of himself he doesn't want to face, and you, without even knowing it, might have touched something raw and unhealed inside him. In those moments, ignoring you becomes his escape, his shield, his way of keeping the walls intact. This isn't to excuse his behavior, but to understand the psychology behind it. Because once you see it for what it is, you stop making it a story about your inadequacy and start seeing it as a mirror to his own inner battles. This is what Carl Jung revealed about why some men ignore the women they care about, and why it's often a sign of emotional weakness, not power. And as we unpack this, I'm going to share with you how to recognize the difference between genuine disinterest and silent self-protection, so you can respond with clarity, strength, and self-respect. If you're new here, we're building a community that values deep, honest conversations about human nature and relationships, so if this resonates with you, hit subscribe and join us. Now, let's begin. The psychology behind emotional ignoring. Emotional ignoring is rarely as simple as it looks on the surface. To many women, it feels like indifference, disinterest, or even cruelty. But to a man, it can be something far more complex. A defensive reflex, a shield he raises the moment he feels emotionally exposed. Some men withdraw not because they don't care, but because they care in a way that scares them. Carl Jung would say, "This is the shadow at work, the hidden part of the psyche where we bury fears, insecurities, and desires we'd rather not admit, even to ourselves." For a man, that shadow might hold an old fear of commitment, a deep anxiety about losing control of his life, or the belief that showing too much emotion makes him weak. These feelings often don't rise to the surface in words. Instead, they slip out through behavior, and ignoring becomes a way to manage the discomfort. Layered over that is the persona, the social mask he wears to the world. Outwardly, he may act busy, unavailable, or even detached, presenting an image of self-sufficiency and control. But often, this is less about the truth of who he is, and more about protecting the fragile parts he keeps hidden. Psychologically, there are a few common reasons for this kind of withdrawal. First, the fear of vulnerability. The moment a man feels he could be emotionally dependent on someone, the instinct to pull back can be overwhelming. Second, an internal conflict between the desire for closeness and the equally strong need for independence. This tug of war can be exhausting, and ignoring becomes the simplest way to resolve it, at least temporarily. Third, past wounds play a massive role. If he's been betrayed, abandoned, or humiliated in a previous relationship, his nervous system may treat emotional intimacy as a potential threat, triggering a retreat before things get too close. I've seen this play out in countless real-life examples. One man I worked with would often go cold in the early stages of dating. To his partner, it looked like disinterest. In reality, every time he felt genuine affection growing, a voice from his past whispered, "If you show her how much you care, she'll leave you, just like the others did." His ignoring wasn't a lack of feeling, it was a preemptive self-defense against the pain he believed was inevitable. Jung's insight helps us see that ignoring is not always about you, but about the unspoken war inside him. Understanding this doesn't mean you should tolerate disrespect or be endlessly patient, but it does mean you can read the situation more accurately. You stop asking, "Why am I not enough?" and start seeing, "What is he afraid of showing?" And in that shift, you reclaim your power because you're no longer chasing explanations from someone who's still hiding from himself. How to respond with strength and clarity. When you're met with emotional ignoring, your instinct might be to react, to send another text, to ask what's wrong, to try to fill the silence with explanations. But strength begins with resisting that impulse. There's a difference between reacting emotionally and responding with awareness. Instead of spiraling into anxiety, pause and ask yourself, what is driving this behavior? Carl Jung reminds us that the actions of others often reveal more about their inner world than about our worth. Not every instance of ignoring is rejection. Sometimes it's evidence of an internal battle he doesn't yet know how to fight. The first step is to slow down your interpretation. Don't label his silence as disinterest without observing the bigger pattern. Watch how he behaves over time, not just in the heat of a single moment. Consistency reveals truth. Anyone can act distant for a day, but avoidance that repeats and deepens says something deeper. Second, protect your self-respect like it's non-negotiable. Chasing someone who is pulling away rarely brings them closer, but it can erode your dignity and energy. Instead, maintain your life's momentum. Keep nurturing your friendships, pursuing your passions, and moving toward your personal goals. This isn't just a tactic to make him notice. It's about anchoring yourself in a life that's full and self-sustained, regardless of his attention. Ironically, this self-possession often increases your value in his eyes, and in your own. Jung would say that understanding another person's psychological wounds frees you from taking their actions personally. If you see that his silence stems from fear, past trauma, or a struggle with vulnerability, you can choose not to internalize it as a statement about you. This doesn't mean tolerating neglect, but rather meeting the situation with clarity instead of self-doubt. One woman I knew faced this choice head-on. She noticed the man she was dating would withdraw for days without explanation. At first, she chased him with calls and messages, but the more she pursued, the colder he became. One day, she stopped. She focused on her career, spent more time with friends, and invested in her own growth. Within weeks, two things became clear. Either he would return with genuine effort, or he would fade away entirely. And that's exactly what happened. He came back, but this time he treated her with more respect, sensing she would no longer tolerate disappearing acts. In the end, she wasn't just reacting to his ignoring, she was responding to her own need for self-respect. That's the essence of strength and clarity, not controlling someone else's behavior, but refusing to abandon yourself in the process. You have to remember that his silence is not an automatic verdict on your value. Often, it's a mirror reflecting his own emotional weakness or the fears he has yet to face. We tend to personalize these moments, to turn them into a story about what we lack or did wrong. But Carl Jung's words cut through that illusion. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. His ignoring may simply be the unconscious at work, old wounds, past disappointments, or an ingrained fear of intimacy steering his behavior without him even realizing it. Your job is not to fix him, chase him, or prove your worth in the silence he leaves behind. Your job is to stand steady in your own presence, to stay connected to the life you are building, and to see clearly that someone's distance often speaks more about their inner battles than it does about you. Next time he ignores you, don't rush to fill the void or explain it away. Instead, notice it, understand it for what it is, and ask yourself whether this is the kind of emotional space you want to live in. Because the truth is, the way someone handles closeness and the way they handle fear will shape the entire course of the connection. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is to let their silence reveal the truth, while you keep moving forward with dignity, clarity, and self-respect.